Hey guys! Tonight, we trudge through the icy morning of a Viking winter farmstead. You're wrapped in thick woolen layers, stepping onto frost-hardened earth beneath a pale gray sky, the kind that feels endless and heavy with cold. Your breath curls like smoke in the frigid air as you prepare to face a day where every movement fights the chill. You probably won't survive this without serious layers and maybe a hot mead, but that's okay. You're here to feel the rhythm of life in the long, dark months. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and local time below, and now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. As dawn breaks weakly, you awaken in a wooden longhouse, the fire smoldering low but still throwing shadows on the rough walls. The cold bites at your fingers as you pull on layers of thick linen and wool, feeling the familiar weight and itch. Outside, the fields lie buried under snow and ice, silent and still, but work waits. Despite the sun's absence, the Viking farmer's day begins early, sometimes before light, because winter is unforgiving and survival depends on persistence. Your first task is to check on the animals, cows, sheep, goats, crucial for milk, wool, and meat. You trudge through packed snow to the shelter, breathing in the sharp scent of hay mixed with animal warmth. Feeding them means hauling frozen fodder, a heavy and often exhausting chore. There's no fancy equipment here, just muscle and grit. Historians still argue about how exactly Vikings managed with such limited daylight, but evidence points to a strict routine, one adapted to the harshness of northern winters. The long nights didn't just slow work, they reshaped daily life itself. You might smile thinking about the smoky smell clinging to your clothes or the crunch of ice beneath your boots, a sensory reminder that winter was a constant companion, shaping everything from your work to your very thoughts. So, as you settle into this cold morning routine, remember, this is not just hard labor, but a dance with the elements, a testament to resilience in one of Europe's most challenging environments. You haul yourself outside into the biting cold, the pale winter light casting long shadows over the frost-covered fields. Your breath rises in small clouds as you trudge through packed snow toward the barn, where the animals wait, their soft murmurs and gentle movements a warm contrast to the chill. Feeding livestock during the winter months is no small feat. The hay bales are heavy, the water troughs prone to freezing, and every step is made more difficult by ice and snow. You grasp the rough bundles of dried grass, tossing them carefully into mangers to keep your cattle, sheep, and goats nourished. Without their survival, your own life would be far bleaker. You can almost hear the low grunts and bleats of gratitude, a small comfort in a harsh season. Historians still debate how Vikings managed to keep animals healthy during brutal winters, but archaeological findings suggest clever adaptations, like insulated shelters and thick bedding of straw or heather to keep warmth. It's likely that farmers took turns ensuring constant care even during the darkest days. Water supply posed a challenge as well. Wells might freeze solid, so farmers had to break ice or rely on nearby streams, balancing survival needs with the dangers of slipping or exposure. You might chuckle at the thought of a Viking farmer slipping on ice while carrying a heavy bale, proof that even the toughest weren't immune to winter's tricks. After tending animals, You might check on the smaller livestock or even the bees if you were lucky enough to have hives, which also required protection from the cold. This daily ritual of care wasn't glamorous, but was the backbone of survival. It connected you deeply to the land and the creatures that shared your hard winter life. So, as you imagine this quiet, necessary work, let the crunch of snow and the warmth of animal breath settle you into the steady rhythm of a Viking farmer's winter. You move on to the next vital part of your winter routine, maintaining your tools and shelter against the biting cold. The wooden longhouse, though sturdy, demands constant care to keep out the drafty chill. You run your hands along the rough-hewn beams, checking for cracks where icy wind might sneak in. Patch jobs with mud, straw, or animal hair are frequent, primitive but effective methods to keep the warmth inside. Your tools, whether axes, sickles, or simple farming implements, require sharpening and oiling. Cold metal becomes brittle, and a dull blade might be the difference between a successful day and injury. You can almost hear the scrape of a whetstone on iron, the sparks flying softly in the dim light of the hearth. Historians still debate how advanced Viking tool maintenance truly was during winter, but archaeological evidence reveals finely crafted blades and careful repair work, suggesting these farmers took their equipment seriously. After all, tools were essential for everything from chopping firewood to preparing food. Gathering firewood is another critical task. You heft heavy logs, the weight intensified by the cold, and stack them meticulously near the hearth to ensure warmth through long, dark nights. Fire wasn't just comfort, it was survival, a lifeline against frostbite and despair. There's an amusing thought. Slipping on ice while hauling firewood was probably a common hazard, making the winter workday a mix of necessity and slapstick. Keeping the shelter warm also meant tending to the fire throughout the day, feeding it steadily with twigs, peat, or dried dung, whatever fuel was available. The flickering flames brought not just heat, but light, a precious commodity in those short days. As you imagine yourself engaged in these chores, feel the rough textures of wood and stone, the heat radiating from the fire, and the cold pressing outside. This balance of elements shaped the Viking winter farmer's day, blending hard labor with simple comforts. You set out into the dimming afternoon, the sky a slate gray, as you begin the essential task of gathering firewood and fuel for the long night ahead. The frozen woods are quiet, save for the soft snap of twigs underfoot and the distant call of ravens. Fire isn't just a luxury. It's your lifeline against the creeping cold that seeps through even the thickest walls. You heft heavy branches and logs, muscles burning from the effort, stacking them carefully near the hearth for easy access. The process is repetitive and tiring, but crucial. Without a steady supply of wood, the longhouse quickly becomes an inhospitable icebox. You might imagine the satisfaction of the first crackling flames that warm your chilled fingers after a day spent outdoors. Historians still debate how Vikings managed fuel shortages during the harshest winters, but evidence points to resourcefulness. They used not only wood, but also peat and dried animal dung, which burned longer and hotter. These alternative fuels had their own odors: peat, smoke, earthy and sharp, mingled with the sweetness of burning wood. The effort to secure fuel extended beyond the farmstead. Neighbors often shared resources, exchanging wood or helping each other chop trees, reflecting a communal spirit essential for survival. You might chuckle, picturing a group of rugged Vikings trading firewood like modern friends swapping playlists. Tending the fire wasn't a set-it-and-forget-it affair either. Constant attention was needed to keep embers alive, adjust airflow, and prevent smoke from filling the living space. A poorly managed fire could mean cold nights, or worse, a house fire, both dire prospects. After stacking wood, you might check on other fuel stores, peat bogs or dried dung piles, ensuring there's enough to last through freezing nights. This preparation often determined the difference between a manageable winter and a disastrous one. As you imagine this vital chore, feel the cold air on your face, the rough bark in your hands, and the warmth radiating from the fire's glow. It's a humble yet heroic act. In the endless battle against winter's grip, you settle down for a moment in the dim light to think about food preservation and storage, the lifelines of winter survival. Fresh crops are a distant memory, so keeping food edible through months of frost is a constant challenge. The Viking farmer's pantry is stocked with dried, salted, smoked, and fermented foods, each method born from necessity and honed over generations. You run your fingers over bundles of dried fish, their tough, leathery texture a far cry from today's fresh catches. Smoking fish and meat was a common preservation technique, filling the air with rich, smoky aromas that lingered in the longhouse. Salting was another method, using coarse sea salt to draw out moisture and inhibit bacterial growth. Grains like barley and rye were stored in sealed containers, sometimes mixed with ash or sand to protect against pests. Root vegetables like turnips and carrots were buried in cool, insulated pits or cellars, keeping them fresh beneath layers of straw and earth. Fermentation, too, played a vital role. Think of sourdough breads and fermented dairy, where beneficial microbes extended shelf life and added flavor complexity. You might smile at the idea of Viking sourdough, simple yet surprisingly effective. Historians still debate the specifics of these methods, particularly how fermentation was controlled without modern knowledge of microbes. Yet, the survival of Nordic populations suggests their techniques were effective. Meal preparation was pragmatic, small portions heated over open fires or in simple ovens. Spices and herbs, though scarce, were used to enhance bland winter fare. You might imagine the comforting aroma of hot stews bubbling in iron pots, a welcome reprieve from cold and hunger. Food storage wasn't just practical. It shaped social rhythms. Gathering and preserving food before winter was communal labor, and sharing stores fostered bonds within villages. Running out of provisions could spell disaster, so vigilance was constant. So, as you picture these simple stores and the care given to them, feel the quiet resilience that sustained Viking farmers through the darkest months. You're now invited into the warm glow of the Viking longhouse kitchen, where simple meals provide comfort amid the harsh winter. Fresh ingredients are scarce, so diet relies heavily on preserved foods, supplemented by what hunting or gathering yields during the colder months. The kitchen's smoky air carries the scent of hearty stews, roasted root vegetables, and dense barley bread. The typical meal might include salted or smoked fish and meat, softened in boiling water or broth to make nourishing soups and pottages. Vegetables like onions, leeks, and cabbage, often stored in root cellars, add flavor and sustenance. Fermented dairy products, such as sour milk or cheese, provide necessary fats and proteins. You might chuckle picturing the monotony of eating similar meals day after day, but also the deep satisfaction in the warmth and fullness they bring. Spices were rare, so herbs like dill and a wild garlic were prized for their ability to brighten flavors. Meals were communal, reinforcing social bonds as families gathered around the fire. Eating wasn't just about nutrition. It was a moment of respite and connection in a relentless season. Sharing food was essential for survival, creating a sense of solidarity. Historians still debate how varied the Viking winter diet really was. While some suggest it was monotonous and bland, others argue that resourcefulness and regional differences brought more diversity than often assumed. Preserving food and preparing meals was a skill passed through generations, reflecting intimate knowledge of the land and seasons. This deep connection between people and environment is a hallmark of Viking resilience. So, as you imagine the simmering pots and shared meals, let yourself feel the warmth of these simple comforts amid the cold, a testament to human endurance and community. You hear the muffled sounds of neighbors exchanging greetings and goods, a vital thread in the fabric of Viking winter life. Community wasn't just about shared festivals. It was a practical network of mutual aid, essential during the harsh months when isolation could mean disaster. Villagers gathered to share resources, exchange labor, and offer emotional support against the bleak backdrop of endless snow. You might imagine neighbors coming together to help repair each other's homes after winter storms, or sharing firewood when supplies ran low. This cooperative spirit ensured that even those with fewer resources could survive the cold. The phrase, "it takes a village," rings especially true here. Work sharing extended to farming tasks that couldn't wait for better weather, mending fences, butchering animals, or preparing tools. Groups might gather to make the labor lighter, and storytelling and laughter softened the hard work. Historians still debate how formalized these cooperative systems were. Some evidence suggests organized guilds or clans, while other accounts highlight more informal arrangements based on kinship and friendship. You might smile picturing a group of burly Vikings swapping stories over a fire, sharing jokes, and making the best of winter's challenges together. These social bonds were not just survival mechanisms, but key to cultural identity and morale. Religious rituals and seasonal celebrations also reinforced community ties, offering breaks from toil and moments of collective hope. Winter solstice festivals, for example, marked the slow return of light and the promise of spring. So, as you imagine this network of support and camaraderie, feel the warmth it brought, not just in physical terms, but as a balm for the soul during long, dark months. You now find yourself in the cozy corner of the longhouse, where textile crafts offer warmth and purpose during the dark winter months. Spinning, weaving, and mending were not mere pastimes, but essential skills, producing the thick woolen clothes that shielded Viking farmers from the bitter cold. You can almost see hands deftly turning a spindle, pulling fibers from sheep's wool and twisting them into strong, warm thread. The rhythmic motion was soothing, filling long nights with quiet productivity. From thread to fabric, these crafts demanded patience and precision. Clothing was layered, linen shirts beneath woolen tunics and cloaks, and carefully maintained to endure the harsh conditions. Patches and repairs were common, and mending became an art form passed down through generations, with patterns sometimes carrying symbolic meanings. Historians still debate the extent of textile production's social organization, whether it was primarily a household activity or involved specialized craftswomen working in communal settings. Either way, textiles were central to daily life and survival. You might chuckle picturing a Viking farmer's wife meticulously sewing a tiny patch only to find it worn through the next day. Such was the relentless wear of winter life. Besides clothing, textiles were used for blankets, sacks, and sails, making the craft versatile and indispensable. Tools like looms and spinning wheels were prized possessions, carefully stored and maintained. As you imagine the soft clacking of loom threads and the warmth of wool in your hands, feel the connection between craft and survival. A quiet, persistent creativity woven into the fabric of Viking winter life. You hear the flickering of candlelight and the soft murmur of chanting as winter's long nights deepen, and the Viking farmer's daily life intertwines with spiritual practices and seasonal rites. Religion in Viking culture was not a separate realm, but infused every action, offering comfort and meaning amid hardship. As you imagine standing beside a hearth adorned with carved wooden idols, you witness rituals honoring gods like Odin, Thor, and Freya, seeking their favor for protection, fertility, and a bountiful spring. Offerings of mead, food, and sometimes even precious objects were made in hopes of easing the harshness of winter. Seasonal celebrations, such as Yule, marked the solstice and the rebirth of the sun, blending solemn rites with feasting and communal joy. These festivals were crucial for morale, reminding farmers that the cold and darkness were temporary and light would return. Historians still argue about the specific details of these ceremonies, as much knowledge was oral and lost with the Christianization of Scandinavia. What remains suggests a rich tapestry of belief woven into daily rhythms. You might smile, picturing a Viking family gathering around the fire, sharing stories of gods and heroes, their voices rising in songs that echoed through the long house, forging bonds stronger than the winter chill. Spirituality also guided farming practices. Planting, harvesting, and animal care were accompanied by prayers and blessings, seeking harmony with nature's cycles. So, as you settle into this sacred atmosphere, feel the quiet strength drawn from faith and tradition, a steady light in the cold darkness of winter. You glance over at the restless children playing near the hearth, their breath visible in the cold air as they practice the daily routines of survival and learning during the long winter days. Child care in Viking times was practical but tender, blending the necessity of work with moments of warmth and education. Young ones learned through observation and imitation, absorbing skills like weaving, tool handling, and animal care. Despite the harshness outside, the long house was filled with stories, songs, and games that nurtured imagination and social bonds. You might imagine the simple toys crafted from wood and bone, cherished for the comfort and distraction they provided. Education was informal but vital. Elders passed down oral histories, laws, and traditions around the fire, preparing the next generation for the responsibilities ahead. It was a blend of play and apprenticeship shaped by the seasons. Historians still debate the balance between work and childhood leisure in Viking society, but evidence points to a culture where children were expected to contribute early while also being protected and taught within the family and community. You might smile picturing a curious child sneaking a piece of smoked fish or trying to mimic the weaving motions of their mother, moments of innocence against a backdrop of survival. Winter, with its forced indoor confinement, intensified these family bonds. The longhouse was not just a shelter, but a school, a playground, and a sanctuary. So, as you picture these youthful moments, feel the enduring spirit of learning and love that thrived even in the coldest months. A warm ember in the Viking winter. You pull on your heavy cloak and step out into the crisp winter air, the pale sun hanging low in the sky as you prepare for a hunting or trapping expedition. Though the frozen landscape seems barren, resourceful Viking farmers supplemented their food stores with game, birds, hares, and deer that offered vital protein during the lean months. Navigating through snow-covered forests, you listen for the soft rustle of movement, feeling the crunch of frost beneath your boots. Traps and snares set earlier might catch small animals, and hunting requires patience and skill, especially when daylight is scarce. Historians still debate how often winter hunting trips occurred and how much they contributed to diets, but archaeological evidence shows the presence of wild game remains in rural sites, indicating it was an important supplement. The risks were real: cold, exhaustion, and the chance of injury in slippery terrain made these excursions dangerous. You might chuckle, picturing a determined hunter slipping on ice but pressing onward anyway. Equipment was simple but effective: bows, spears, and traps fashioned from wood, bone, and sinew. Successful hunts not only fed families, but also provided pelts for clothing and trade. Community members sometimes hunted together, sharing game and pooling resources. This cooperation was crucial in times when the elements were unforgiving. As you imagine this quiet, vital work, feel the sharpness of the cold air, the thrill of the hunt, and the deep connection to the natural world that sustained Viking farmers through winter's challenges. You trudge back to the farmstead as the day's light fades, turning your attention to repairing fences and buildings, tasks that don't pause for winter's grip. The wooden palisades that protect fields and livestock can suffer from snow's weight, ice's freeze-thaw cycle, and the wear of wind-driven storms. With steady hands, you replace broken posts and tighten lashings, working efficiently to secure your domain before the cold deepens. The longhouse's roof and walls need regular attention, as even a small leak can spell disaster when freezing weather follows. Historians still debate how extensive winter construction was, but archaeological digs reveal evidence of continuous maintenance, suggesting these chores were a year-round necessity. Limited daylight meant that farmers maximized every moment of light, often working from dawn to dusk. Tools for repair, hammers, nails, saws, were kept close at hand, and working alongside family or neighbors made the heavy labor more manageable. You might smile, picturing a group of farmers clumsily handling tools while shivering, but laughing through the shared effort. Beyond practicality, these repairs were investments in survival and comfort, ensuring shelter against the harsh elements. The farmstead was not just a home, but a fortress, and maintaining it was a constant priority. So, as you imagine the rhythm of repair, feel the physicality of labor, the smell of fresh-cut wood, and the camaraderie that helped Viking farmers withstand winter's relentless pressures. You settle in by the fire as twilight deepens, the long house filled with the gentle murmur of voices sharing stories and songs. Storytelling in the Viking winter wasn't just entertainment. It was a vital tradition, weaving history, culture, and values into the fabric of community life. Around the hearth, tales of gods, heroes, and ancestors sparked imagination and connection, lighting the darkness beyond the fire's reach. Skalds, poets, and storytellers held an honored place, their performances blending history with myth, humor, and moral lessons. You might imagine the soft rhythm of verses, the occasional laughter or gasp, as listeners hung on every word. These gatherings strengthened social bonds and passed down wisdom essential for survival. Historians still debate the precise content and form of these oral traditions, as much was transmitted verbally and lost over time. Yet, the rich legacy of Norse sagas hints at the depth and importance of storytelling. Even simple stories about daily life or local legends offered comfort during long, cold nights. You might smile picturing a grandfather spinning a yarn about a mischievous troll or a brave warrior's exploits, captivating wide-eyed children. These evening rituals weren't just cultural. They reinforced identity, resilience, and hope, reminding everyone that even in winter's harshness, life carried meaning and continuity. So, as you imagine these fireside tales, let the warmth and rhythm of ancient voices lull you deeper into the steady pulse of Viking winter life. You rise early once again, turning your thoughts toward the future as you prepare for spring planting beneath winter's cold blanket. Even while snow covers the fields, a Viking farmer's mind is busy planning, selecting seeds, repairing tools, and envisioning the coming growing season. Seeds of barley, rye, and oats were carefully stored and inspected during winter. Farmers might soak or pre-treat seeds to ensure better germination. You can almost see the worn wooden seed box, its compartments organized by crop type and quality. Winter was a time for strategic thinking, assessing last year's harvest and making adjustments. Tools needed sharpening and mending to be ready for the intense spring labor. Farmers might carve wooden markers for new rows or reinforce irrigation ditches where possible. Historians still debate how formalized winter preparation was, but evidence of specialized storage and planning suggests a level of agricultural foresight that kept communities resilient. You might chuckle, picturing a farmer pacing his snowy field, talking to himself or his family about where to plant, despite the ground being frozen solid. The winter downtime also allowed for knowledge sharing, exchanging tips on crop rotation, pest control, and soil fertility during community gatherings. These exchanges strengthened social ties and collective wisdom. So as you imagine this quiet, hopeful work, feel the tension between winter's stillness and the promise of new growth, a balance that shaped the Viking farmer's relentless spirit. You settle into the final quiet moments of the day, the fire's warmth fading to glowing embers as you reflect on the winter's slower pace. Rest and reflection were as important as labor, offering respite from harsh conditions and space to gather strength for the coming seasons. The long nights encouraged inward thought, storytelling, and spiritual contemplation. You might imagine the hush of the household as members settled into simple beds of straw, the low murmur of prayer or song drifting through the wooden walls. These moments were vital for mental resilience, reinforcing bonds and sustaining hope through the coldest months. Historians still debate how much rest Vikings actually got versus how much labor was demanded, but the cultural value placed on communal gatherings and rituals suggests a balance. Quiet reflection also included tending to personal belongings, repairing clothing, and preparing small comforts. Simple acts of care that sustained daily life. You might smile picturing a tired farmer enjoying a rare moment of peace, eyes heavy, mind drifting toward dreams of thawing earth and green fields. So as you drift with these last images, let the steady rhythm of endurance and rest carry you gently toward sleep, a fitting close to a day in the life of a Viking farmer in winter.